Welcome to part 2 of my introduction. Hopefully, if you haven't seen part 1, that should show up on the screen quite shortly, so therefore you can actually just go back and view it. If this is the very first time of actually coming to my channel, I've also got an introduction as well, which should also actually show up on the screen. So this is the second part. I hope you enjoy it. If you can, give me a like and also will subscribe to my channel. That would be greatly appreciated. So primary school was an experience. So as I said, I spent 3 years as opposed to 5 years, which was great, which was a blessing. I then went on to secondary school, and that's when my problems started to escalate. So obviously during my primary school, I was obviously still dealing with the issue of disability being different, also with an abusive father, in terms of someone who was actually very physically abusive. He had a very violent temper, and also emotionally abusive and psychologically abusive as well. So in his wisdom, because I'd actually done so well in my during my primary school, and because his friends were sending their children to a top secondary school, which is about 100 miles away, he decided for me to go there. And so I went, and what I didn't realise was how inaccessible it was. Essentially, it was like being in a university, despite the fact it was just a college, and the classrooms were at all different locations, sometimes up to a quarter of a mile to half a mile away. So therefore, you had to go from one classroom from one lecture to another. And there were actually steps everywhere. I'm never ever gonna forget the first day I was there, and we were queuing up for lunch, and I'd gone up, and I'd got my lunch, and unfortunately I tripped over, and all the kids, because again these were the juniors, I must need to say these seniors hadn't started by then. And they all started laughing at me, which was my very first day there, which was actually quite hard. Also need to mention that it was actually a boarding school. And so anyway, so one of the dinner ladies saw my plight, picked me up, and got me a fresh dish. And I sat on the table, and I sat down on the table. All the kids were there, just moved out of the way. So which was it wasn't the best feeling in the world, and I just felt I felt that small. My problems from there then escalated. The washroom facilities weren't very accessible. Sometimes we didn't have running water. I couldn't wash my clothes. A lot of the children, especially the juniors, were being bullied. I was not excluded from that bullying, and what I would then do is, because of the injustice of it, I used to go and report some of the seniors to the headmaster. They would then get into trouble, but a lesson that I didn't realize at that stage is that you actually never tell on your seniors. It's almost like that thing about being in prison, that you never snitch. So I was labelled as a snitch, and as a result was then marginalised by the seniors, but also by my peers as well. And it was a very tough year. And but what made it tougher was the fact that because I wasn't coping in terms of the accessibility, I then obviously would then get beaten by my dad. Again, this is all mentioned in my book, because I wasn't coping. So this just lasted for a year, and it's one of the worst years of my life. I think I was probably about 12, 13 then. It definitely was one of the worst years of my life. I then went on to another school because I think he realised that I wasn't going to cope there, which was actually in the same city as I was. It was a day school, and so I used to be able to get the bus there, or sometimes it'll drop me off. And which was called actually Loyola College, if I can say it. Gosh, my words are going. And so I was there for about 4 or 5 years, and the reason I was there for 4 or 5 years is because I had to repeat a year, because I was just so playful. Because what was happening is that at home I couldn't really go out and play as much as I wanted to, so school was my playground. That's where I felt free, because at home, obviously, my dad being very, very strict. I remember, I used to have to get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and despite the fact that I wasn't really going anywhere, but I had to be up 6 o'clock in the morning to be seen to be studying, or to be doing something. My job was to clean the car and also to do the ironing, that sort of thing. And I also had to go back. I had to go to bed late at night as well. So all he ever wanted me to do was study. So there wasn't much there wasn't much room to play. And if I wasn't studying, then I was in trouble, getting beaten for it. So yeah. So that was my kind of secondary school life. Obviously, again, being actually the only disabled person at the college. Can I call it college? Well, okay, secondary school was very marginalising as well. But I did cope. I'm thankful. I had a really good set of friends, very supportive friends. But again, being different, obviously being in a situation where your friends were starting to have girlfriends, and I hadn't had a girlfriend. It's all these little things like that. So I finished my secondary school, and my parents allowed me to come back to the UK. Unfortunately for me, I was very happy to come back to UK, but then I was faced with blatant racial discrimination. I'm now talking about the early 80s. That just shows my age. Things have moved on a lot since then, but back then it was quite common for people to hurl racist abuse at you. I remember actually getting into a bus and sitting down, and people around me just moving away. That kind of just brought memories of me actually being back at school. And and people were just very hostile. So when I first came back to the UK, I was about 18, and I actually came back to Leicester, and I just I just couldn't cope with it. So from there, I then went to London. So I'm going to cut some of this short, because again, everything is all in my book. Otherwise, I could be rabbiting on for hours, and I'm sure you've got things to do as opposed to listen to me rabbit on all day. So I then went to London. So from London, I did my A levels. I've got to admit, I did not pass my A levels. The reason being is because I was very, very playful. And so my dad came to get me, and I said I wasn't going to go, so he tricked me again, which is in my book, and I was then stuck in Nigeria again for another 2 years. Fortunately, this time I didn't live with him. I lived with my grandmother, and only saw him occasionally. Thank goodness for that. So after that, I then came back to the UK again, and this time actually attended another college. And that's when I met my wife. And then I've got to admit, my life was on a downward spiral. I think because of all the trauma and all the abuse. I was drinking too much, I was smoking too much, and I was just basically doing everything in excess, and I wasn't really doing anything to actually progress my career. So I met my wife at the International Students House in London. She offered me a Jaffa cake. She sat right next to me, and I said no, because I don't like Jaffa cakes, but I kept her number. 2 weeks later, I was at the laundry, and a number actually fell out of my pocket, because of, I'd written a number on the back of a cigarette packet. And a number fell out. I thought, okay, let me give her a ring, see what she says. And we met, and I picked her up, and I'll never forget, because I said to her, where do you want to go? And she said, oh, I'll go anywhere you want to go. She said, I'll even go to McDonald's. And I just liked the fact that she was just so genuine, so kind, and so and so what's the word, accepting, and she didn't have any airs or graces about her. And 3 weeks later she moved in, and we've now been together for the last 33 years. And not only that, we're a mixed couple. She's white and black, and you can imagine some of the stares that we used to get, some of the comments that we used to get back in the day, because mixed couples were the norm. Even now, I think obviously it's becoming a lot more normal now. But back then, also being in an interabled relationship, I think that's what they're called, interabled relationship as well, actually brought his own challenges. But she stuck by me, and and our relationship has just got stronger and stronger as as time progressed. So while we were in London, and we decided that that we wanted to basically, essentially what we were doing is that we were working at the time, but things weren't really progressing for us. I was working for a firm. I think I was like a junior accounts assistant or something like that. She was working for a company that did coffee. I can't remember what they're called. And she was like some sort of administrative assistant there. And then we decided, we said to ourselves, okay, things are not going well for us in terms of, so we actually moved out of London and we went to Luton. And what we did was we took a step back from being in a situation whereby we had some money coming in to then going back to being students again. So we went back to be students again. All this is in the book, I'm going to cut it short. And we ended up, first went to Luton, then went to De Montfort University. We both got accepted to De Montfort University in Leicester. I did my master's degree, and she did her first degree in fashion. And after I finished my master's degree, because one thing my parents had always said to me, and throughout, is that in order to get a good job, I need to be highly educated, because they, in their minds, they thought it would level the playing field. Because back in Nigeria, the higher educated you were, and I need to emphasize that were, back then, the better your job prospects. But in the UK, as you probably know, in other countries, it's not just about your qualifications, it's also about your actually having some experience, some relevant work experience as well. And unfortunately, so I'd actually worked through getting myself a master's degree. It was a master's degree in business administration. I call it a master of bugger all, because again, for me, the qualification was useless because I didn't have the relevant experience. So I was hitting the job market and just getting rejection after rejection after rejection after rejection, which is quite disheartening. And in the end, I started to do, I had to go back to doing like accounts assistant's job, because obviously I studied quite a bit of accountancy. So I was more low-level accountancy jobs. I lied about my qualifications in the fact that I didn't even tell people that I actually had a master's degree, because it was frightening employers away, because they thought, oh, this guy's too qualified, he's not going to hang around. So I stopped actually saying to people that I had a master's degree. So fortunately for me, a charity, I applied for a job at a charity as a finance manager, obviously not thinking I was going to get it. But they gave me a chance, and I was there for, about 7 years. And it's just one of those situations, and as a lot of disabled people will tell you, is that, once someone gives you a chance, it's almost like winning the lottery, because someone's giving you a proper job for a change. And I used to be the first one in, and often the last one out. And that's what I picked up actually quite a lot of my skills in terms of my relevant skills. Unfortunately, after being there for about 7 years, I started to become ill. I was becoming very fatigued. I was starting to get muscle ache, and I was having all sorts of issues, and I kept on going to the doctors, and the doctors couldn't diagnose what was wrong with me. So after a period of 6 months, someone said to me, could it be that you've got the late effects of polio? And I said, what are the late effects of polio? Because to me, I just thought that that you get the polio. If you're fortunate enough, you recover, because some people actually recover a lot better than I have, or some people are actually worse than I am. But it transpires that after 30 to 40 years, 80% of polio sufferers start suffering from secondary symptoms. So some of the symptoms are fatigue, muscle ache. Some people have got like Parkinson's type symptoms. So if you see my left hand, that always shakes. They actually thought it was Parkinson's, but I haven't got Parkinson's. I've just got a benign tremor, and that's basically because of the weakness that's on that left arm. And I was forced to leave my job. And when I say forced, I wasn't pushed out. I did the right thing. I went to my employers and I said to them, I'm sorry, I can no longer, I can no longer fulfill this role to the best of my ability. And I left, and I became unemployed. So, which was one of my darkest times, because essentially, what do I do now? So that was the end of part 2. It's a 3-part series. If you can give me a like and also will subscribe to my channel, that would be greatly appreciated. Part 3 should be showing up right now on your screen, so I shall see you in part 3.